Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. We are on HAAB meeting number 36. Welcome into the virtual space. We will be waiting for a few HAAB members to join us as they are transitioning from their day jobs, if you will. So give us just a moment. Thank you for your patience. And we will begin our Historic Albina Advisory Board meeting shortly. Good afternoon, all, and welcome. I am Erica Warren, and today is Tuesday, March 11th. We are about to begin the Historic Albina Advisory Board meeting. We are waiting for just a few more HAAB members to join us in the virtual space, and we will get our meeting underway. Thank you for your patience. Support, if someone could resend the link for the meeting to John Washington, please.
Will do. Thank
Good afternoon. Welcome into the virtual space. I'm Erica Warren, your facilitator for the Historic Albina Advisory Board. We are waiting for just a couple more HAAB members, and no worry, Miss Joy. We're waiting for just a couple more to join us in the space. coupled with some technical difficulties, and we will start our meeting in just one moment. If our technical team could bring our slides up. I know we have some that are joining. I still want to be conscious of our time. A couple that I know will be joining us in about 30 minutes or so. So want to remind all of you that the meeting chat is considered part of the public record and will be included in our meeting summary. Next slide, please. If you're having any technical difficulties, which we have already experienced today, please reach out to our team. They're awesome at helping. The number there is on the screen, 479-8674. Next slide. Today, we will have an opportunity, as we always do, for public comment. So if there are community members from our Metroplex and around who are joining us along for the work on the I-5 Rose Quarter project and have public comment to deliver to the HAAB today, you'll have an opportunity to do so very shortly. After that, we will have project updates from our project director, Ms. Megan Channel. Following, we will have some updates from our colleagues at the City of Portland in regards to the Reconnecting Albina project plan and how that is shaping up. We will have a design update from our wonderful A&E architecture and engineering team, the design team. And then we will have some next steps and adjourn for today in preparation for our work together. Next slide. You all should be familiar with these. We want to hear from HAAB members in the space, so your voice matters. Please make sure you are leveraging your raise hand feature, and I will call on you and we'll get clarity for those things you might have questions for, or if you have comments to make. Make sure you're authentic and genuine. I trust that all of you that will be listening for understanding, and that if there is a pain point that you will deal with issues and not people today. We're all working through this to an expected end and successful completion of this project. We may experience some discomfort with some of the things that we hear or we're dealing with, but we ask that you would remain respectfully engaged in the process. And that you would expect and accept that we won't solve everything for the Rose Quarter today, but each time that we gather together, we are moving the needle one step forward to a beautiful completed project. And with that, our next slide, please. At this time, you will have the opportunity, those who are not HAAB members, who are joining us from the community, you all have an opportunity to present to the Historic Albina Advisory Board. I'm going to ask my colleague, Natalie, if she would assist me here with our public comment.
Thanks, Erica. We invite members of the public who are viewing the meeting on the live stream to make a verbal public comment now at this time by phone. And if you wish to do so, please dial the phone number that's shown on the slide. Then when prompted, enter the meeting ID and passcode that are shown. After doing so, you'll be placed in a virtual waiting room until your turn to speak. Then when the time comes, we'll invite you to unmute yourself and say your comment. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes for their comment and will be muted at time. If you'd like to provide more extensive comments to members of the HAAB, please see the options listed on the meeting agenda. We have received one written comment, which was shared with HAAB members ahead of this meeting. So to make a verbal public comment now, please dial 971-247-1195 and enter meeting ID 845-4224-8686 and enter passcode 909309. And now I'm checking to see if we have anyone who has done so, indicating that they'd like to make a public comment. I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room for now. Can go ahead and read the meeting ID again is 845-4224-8686, and the passcode is 909309. And I'm still not seeing anyone wishing to make a comment, so I'll hand it back to you, Erica.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Again, for those who might go back and watch the recording of this meeting, if you have comment that you would like to bring into the space before the Historic Albina Advisory Board, please avail yourself to all of the ways in which you can communicate with this board to give input. Next slide, please. At this time, we will be hearing from Megan Channel to share project updates.
Thanks, Erica, and good afternoon, HAAB. And before I get into any project updates, I want to introduce Tiffany Penson, who is our Urban Mobility Office Director. So Tiffany, I'll turn it over to you for an introduction and meeting present tonight.
Hi, hello, everyone. I'm excited to be joining this meeting and learning more about the work that you guys are doing. My name is Tiffany Penson. I am the new Urban Mobility Office Director. I come by way of many years at City of Portland, working from starting my career permitting, moving over to the mayor's office around education policy, creating policy of how we work with our small businesses and provide technical assistance, procurement, and most recently standing up people and culture, which is really about how do we center our employees and balance that with the needs of the organization to best deliver our services and at the same time take care of our people. So again, I am a little over 30 days in, so I'm learning a lot, and I'm really glad to have Megan, because she has been a champ in making sure that I'm up to speed. For those of you that I don't know, I look forward to meeting you. For those that I do know, I look forward to connecting you around the work of the office. Thank you. Hi, Erica.
Thanks, Tiffany. HAAB members, I don't know if there's any questions that you have of Tiffany before I dive into project update. Okay, well, I will jump right in. Well, my update today is really going to focus just on sort of funding and project delivery status. So some of this will be a bit repetitive from our meeting of before, but just want to make sure that everyone's grounded sort of on the funding we have and where we're headed and kind of the exciting program ahead. So I think, as you recall, back in December, the Oregon Transportation Commission allocated the additional $250 million to Rose Quarter. And that is moving through our funding programming process at the state level. That was approved in January by our Transportation Commission, and it's currently going through our regional body at Metro to program that $250 million so that we can do really two key things. One, get construction started this summer on some key elements, and then two, expand upon the work of Reconnecting Communities grant around the highway cover. So on the next slide, some of this will look familiar to you, but just as a grounding, phase 1A is the work that would start this summer. And so that is focused on 2 key elements of work: stormwater improvements on the north end, or on the left side of the image, and then bridge preservation work on the south end of the project area, or the right side of the image. The stormwater improvements are needed not only for the Rose Quarter project, but also for ODOT's Portland Harbor agreement with the Department of Environmental Quality. And then the bridge preservation is really focused around the I-5 mainline bridge structure as it crosses underneath Interstate 84. And so it'd be upgrading that structure to be more seismically resilient, improving the paving, so the deck overlay there, and then retrofitting some of the safety railing on the sides of the bridges. And so that work is also necessary not only for the maintenance of I-5 in the region, but to ready the project for construction, or the full project for construction. This portion of work will also allow for the southernmost portion of the auxiliary lane between the Interstate 84 exit ramp and the Morrison Bridge exit ramp. So when this phase of work is complete, that merging point from the southbound on-ramp near Moda, near 84, drivers will have more time and space to make their merging and weaving movements in that area. So that's the work that would start in 2025. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in selecting this work, we were also really intentional on getting the community to work. And what I mean by that is maximizing opportunities for disadvantaged business enterprises. So this is where we're really leveraging the work of our contractor through Hamilton Sunt Joint Venture and Raymore to have DBEs serve as what we'll call a mini prime under their guidance and technical assistance to take on some of the prime work of these components to help build up that capacity. So excited to get those shovels in the ground this summer and get the project started. On the next slide, so the $250 million, or a portion of the $250 million, shall I say, from the commission, in addition to phase 1A, would also fund what we call phase 1, which would follow on the heels of phase 1A, so starting in 2027. And this is where we start to compound the work that would be done with the Reconnecting Communities grant. So Reconnecting Community Grant focuses on the first portion of the highway cover at Broadway and Weidler. And this additional funding would put some funding into the highway cover, and then also to implement I-5 mainline improvements with the full southbound auxiliary lane and a portion of the northbound auxiliary lane. And this work, kind of coupling this work together, A, allows us to build more of the highway cover, and B, from a constructability standpoint, is a lot more efficient and it's kind of reducing impact to community and traveling public as we construct this all together. So just wanted to kind of reground HAAB in what the current funding provides us. On the next slide, I do just want to zoom in. This image is a plan view of the highway cover area, and it's overlaying against the work that our HAAB did with Albina Vision Trust, kind of looking at how the highway cover and adjacent lands could be utilized in the future for kind of that long-term development and vision in alignment with community. And so this is just outlining the area of the highway cover around Broadway and Weidler that is funded through the OTC funding, or House Bill 2017 funding, and then the Reconnecting Communities grant. So you can kind of see the parcels on cover in between Broadway and Weidler, and then some of the parcels off cover that would be included in that funding. So just wanted to kind of transition that to what it means from future development opportunity as well. I'll pause for questions after I make just one more statement, and just saying, you know, despite the these phases being focused on parts of the project work, we still at ODOT, to our highest level with our director, we all remain committed to delivering the project in full. And so we see this as a step towards that commitment, recognizing that as funding becomes available, we'll be phasing in the rest of the project, but we stand committed to deliver the project in full. So with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions.
There are HAB members who have questions for Megan. Please leverage the raise hand feature. I see a hand from Andrew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for this visual. It's good to see see everything on like one map. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so it's nice to see. I was just one question is I know you've got the name building and like the zoning of certain projects. Do this kind of like share kind of like who owns like the right of way to like the land or building on this map?
Yeah, so Andrew, this map here kind of shows the future potential uses for the highway cover and adjacent areas. It doesn't show either existing ownership nor future ownership of these. What I can say is that the highway cover land itself, because it spans over Interstate 5, ODOT will always own that land. I know that's, we've talked about that a lot in this space. So ODOT will always own that land. We will then lease that space for the air rights on the cover for development on top. And I know we've had conversations in this space too, kind of around the work planning with Albina Vision Trust and their interest in having rights to that. So that process is continuing, but the air rights and the leases and the ownership rights of these properties isn't defined on the graphic. That'll be a next step in the process.
Thanks, Andrew. Sprinna, I see your hand, and then to Mr. Washington and Miss Kimberly Moreland.
Yes, thank you. And my apologies for being off camera, but I'm nursing a migraine, so I'm just sitting with as little visual stimulation as possible. My question is about the unfunded cover pieces. I'm wondering, from a practical sense, what exactly does that mean? Does this mean that you can build the on-cover parcels 7, 8, and 12, and then pause and not build 1, 2, 3, and 5? Or does it mean you can build the cover but not something above it? Can you help explain that to me a little bit better?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, Sprinavasa. So the highway cover, the section that we're building, would be what I'll say like forward compatible with the future remaining portions of the highway cover. So the funded part would be built sort of in its final nature. And so would provide space for, say, sites 7, 8, and 12 on the cover. When funding becomes available, should that be sort of concurrently with project construction of the first phase or at a later date, we can tie in the remaining area of the highway cover to that existing one. So those sites then would be made available at that future date that those portions of the cover are built.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Washington.
Good afternoon. The question that and thanks, Andrew, for asking that question. I guess for me, when you spoke about the air rights to the parcels, so are you saying that those are open for public bid, or is that an RFP? And if AVT gets that, are you saying that they would be the sole builders on that site?
So the ODOT currently has a process in place, and it's dictated by state regulation and administrative rules for the process to go through what the lease rights and air rights are. As part of the work that was directed to us by the Transportation Commission early last year, there was an ask to see, like, could AVT have the rights to those air rights or surplus lands. So through that effort, we identified that regulation would need to change to make that possible. And so Albina Vision Trust now is leading an effort in a legislative concept to work through that. And so the regulation would need to change to make that possible. And that's what's being discussed right now.
Is that being discussed in the transportation department, the city? Where's that being discussed at?
At the legislative level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Miss Kimberly Moreland, I see your hand.
Hello, everyone. I have a question about the cover. What is the total acreage of the cover? And also, how did you determine the areas, the I don't know what you call it, design or the uses for those different sections? Was that a kind of a public process or based on environmental conditions or?
Yeah, great question, Kimberly. So I'll answer your first question. So the acreage of the cover. So the on-cover space is about 4 acres of developable land on cover. And then it's another kind of just shy of 4 acres off cover as well. So in total, when you're looking at the land, both on cover and off cover, it's about 8 acres with that equal split of on and off cover. And then the question on how did this get decided? So this was an effort that was really led by Albina Vision Trust and city team. You may be speaking to more of this in the Reconnecting Albina Planning Project work too, but it was really led by Albina Vision Trust and bringing community together to say, all right, if with this space, how would we like to use that? So ABT kind of convened some community meetings over the summer. HAAB members were invited. And so this is just sort of a reflection of that collaboration between Albina Vision Trust community members and HAAB members for what could be possible here. But in terms of like formalizing agreements for this is exactly the type of development or use that's going to go where, we haven't gotten to that point in the process, but this is a really good base for it.
And I'll provide just a little bit more context. Even the work that was done this summer with Albina Vision Trust, as well as HAAB and COAC members, was anchored by a foundation that began with the independent cover assessment and all of the work that was done with community around vision for what could be possible, what needs were greatest, and even in dreaming about what a revitalized area could be. So that foundation was leveraged in the ongoing conversation as the community came together to envision. So all of this is our highest, best self about usage and what community needs are available. Again, formally to be seen as the process continues and funding becomes available.
Yeah, and I'll add just one more piece to that too, and thanks for that, Erica, is that, this is where the partnership with City of Portland becomes ever important. City of Portland is the land use entity for our city. They'll be the ones really taking the leadership role for that development process for what goes on top. So this image here is really just a start to that.
Thank you so much. And I do have another question that's kind of related to not the covers, but are there any like opportunity sites that would be adjacent to the new transportation system? That could be so I know oftentimes you have these remnant pieces of land after you develop, bridges and wondering, is there any sites that could possibly be sold and used for, community purpose or?
Yeah, absolutely. And we could do a better job in distinguishing between what's on cover and off cover here. That's for sure. But I can point to the numbers for you. So like as an example, sites on the lower right-hand corner, sites 10 and 9 are off cover. And those are sites that we will be using for, construction staging and access during construction. But once the project is done, to your point, we don't need them for transportation purpose. So we see those as viable for surplusing and use for the community. So 10, 11, or 9 and 10 on the right-hand side. Site 11, that's on just the left side of the highway cover. Those are the 3 that are included in the currently funded phase of the project. As you look to the areas where we're still seeking funding, kind of site number 4, which would be the lower left-hand corner of the unfunded area, shown in purple. That's also off-cover space that could be for that future development. So those are the key ones that I'll highlight.
And before I move to Mr. Washington, I would say, Kimberly, in that visioning, when you were asking about particular uses, obviously off-cover potential is different than some of the on-cover potential. And so that drove the community conversation about potential future development on those sites.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Mr. Washington, I see your hand again.
Well, yeah. Well, when I'm listening to you guys talk to Kimberly about, the tops, the caps, and I guess I'm a little bit caught in the middle of a dialogue in my head. And one of those dialogues when we first started was the dialogue of restorative justice. Okay, and that was a big impetus around what drove the conversation about was on the top of those covers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in light of where we're at today, for the next 4 years, I guess, are we calling this something different now? Or is the conversation different? Or do we still speak that kind of language in this format at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, what I'll say is, like ODOT's values haven't changed. Our commitment to this project hasn't changed. And so as it relates to our, acknowledging the harms that, the agency was part of the past, we remain committed to making sure that we're not repeating those in the future. And so with that restorative justice piece is still an integral part of this project.
Okay, so that conversation about the restorative justice piece is there. But that's the elephant in the living room, I believe, on the HAAB, and the conversation is about how do we arrive at restorative justice when we're talking about the cost of what to build on those caps are still not, that conversation still hasn't been in the space. And that's a conversation that I'm curious as to how we're going to navigate, because what we came up with in the summer, that cap, the complete cap project in the summer was worth $400 million. When is that conversation going to happen? Because, I mean, we're talking about, the caps and what could potentially be built on it. The restorative justice piece was the elephant in the living room. How are we going to arrive at covering the cost to build on those caps?
Yeah, and Mr. Washington, I know you're referencing to some of the conversations we had with Echo Northwest that kind of presented some preliminary data over summer and fall of last year. This is where we're really going to lean on our partnership with the city of Portland as well, and community, Albina Vision Trust, and community and HAAB. But that'll be a future part of the process. We're really focused on how do we build the cover first, and then getting to that, we need to create that space so that there could be that future place and those economic and opportunities.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Megan before we move forward? I see none.
Appreciate it all. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. With that, we are moving on to our next slide, our next phase of the meeting. I'll be turning it over to our colleague from the city, Rachel Hoy, with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Thanks, Erica. Good evening, everyone. For this, and we can go to the next slide. For this, I'm actually going to share this space with Mike Saratella to describe a little bit of a summary of what occurred at the kickoff event for the Reconnecting Albina Planning Project.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel. Good afternoon, HAAB members. I'm Mike Saratella, Senior Planner at the Portland Bureau of Transportation. Yeah, and many of you were at this event, so I may call on you to share your own impressions and takeaways from that event as well. I saw a lot of HAAB members and folks at the meeting. But yeah, so on February 27th, about 2 weeks ago, we held our kickoff event for the Reconnecting Albina Planning Project at Tubman Middle School, so just right north of the I-5 Rose Quarter project. And it was a great kickoff event. We had a couple hundred people show up, and it went throughout the evening. We had speakers, both from community leaders, elders in the community, city staff, and it was a chance to really kind of see all these pieces come together, right? So the transportation investments that PBOT and ODOT will be making, as well as private development and building out that street grid, development opportunities on the CAB and through the PPS site and other opportunity sites in the area. And, you know, some kind of first look at some of the new public open spaces throughout the district, both in the near term, thinking about Larrabee and other kind of public gathering spaces, but also some of the early work that BPS and Albina Vision Trust have done looking at the waterfront park site as a future opportunity. So the event was set up with a kind of general call to bring everyone together and kind of frame the evening. And we had a couple different stations where folks could come talk with staff about kind of these different elements of the plan. Yeah, and so some of my, well, here, let me share it with the group a little bit. So Erica, you were there. Do you want to share some of your impressions? I know, John, I saw you there. I think I saw Bryson and Tiffany as well. Anything you'd like to add?
Maybe there are HAAB members, Kimberly or John, I'll defer to you all if you have feedbacks or takeaways from that event.
Kimberly, if you'd like to go first, you're welcome.
Okay, sure. I really thought it was, like you said, it was well attended. I loved the ability to visually see the vision, you know, that you guys had really great opportunities for us to participate. I thought of a lot after I left and really wanted to see if there's any other opportunity to share feedback. But I thought it was really very, and I want to say insightful, and you really got a sense of what the space would look like. And I really, you know, I appreciate the format that you guys provided for feedback.
Thanks.
We appreciated the food that was prepared and it was always a good time there. And what we started to recognize is that map is getting bigger and it's growing into the district itself, and I'm impressed with that. There's some great opportunity for a lot of other communities to be connected. And so I was impressed more or less with how that was going, how that went. The Soul District, it seemed like it's pushing pretty deep into the Soul District at this point in time, those maps. So we'd like to make sure that we keep a little bit of an eye on how that's growing, how that's connecting. We'd rather be connected than disconnected. So, it's kind of like, but I think the plan is on its way. And I think some opportunity is there. I think that it's important for us to be able to take advantage of that opportunity to really connect ourselves and not disconnect ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely, John. This is just one, this is where a lot of the action is right now in the near term, but it really connects to all the parts of the greater Albina and School District parts of the neighborhood. It's going to be a new anchor, but it also relates to all the historic important nodes throughout the district. And we want to make sure we honor that both in our engagement and also in the kind of way we frame the work ahead over the next year and a half as we get through this work.
And I also want to share that, and I shared this with colleagues at ABT, that what I saw as a community that could be enjoyed by all ages and abilities. And that's really what's important to me. That it's a space that can be enjoyed by pedestrians, those who are, may, on bicycles and other motorized, you know, vehicles. But it was, I had this experience in Maui actually, where there was elderly folks who was out walking in their walkers by themselves, and they could enjoy the space. And so that's what I would love to see, is that, you're able to, create, a connected community, but with pathways that can be enjoyed by all abilities, and have confidence and feel safe in the space. And so that's what I think I saw a glimpse of that in some of the areas.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so we'll be putting out a report that kind of summarizes some of our takeaways. There was staff all around the room. We got to huddle up, share what we heard, as well as process all the comments that we received at the meeting, and then we'll be putting that out of the next couple weeks. And then in terms of next steps, we're looking ahead to the summer to try to connect with that broader group at some of the events in the neighborhood. Events like Juneteenth or Good in the Hood. I'm going to make sure that we're getting into all the different spaces. And we'll be and then this is probably a good transition over to back to Rachel, is that we'll be hosting the next HAAB meeting. Will be city led, and we'll be getting into that real nexus between the I-5 Rose Quarter project and the CAP, and how that relates to the RAP planning process, and how these two parallel efforts kind of join at that central nexus, which is the freeway CAP. But yeah, we'll see you next month at that event. HAAB members, and I believe members of the COAC and others are welcome to attend that as well. And then at events in the summer, and we're kind of looking towards fall for our next major kind of touch point with community, where we kind of share those next steps. So, but yeah, maybe I'll pass it over to Rachel.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a good segue. To the next slide, please. So as Mike mentioned, this next upcoming meeting in April, I want to point out we've changed the date. And so I believe you all have a hold on your calendars, which we'll have that. We'll have the ODOT team change that for us to April 24th. So not April 8th, April 24th. We are still finalizing the location. I will say that we've been discussing a little bit more, making sure that this is accommodating for all. So, we are also looking at in-person, but hybrid opportunity. So that's not noted here on the screen, but I just want you all to know that we want to make sure that this is a space and a location that is going to be accommodating for our HAAB members, our COAC members. And if you all recall, I was looking back at my calendar. It was actually a year ago, last March. We were together for a meeting where it was HAAB, COAC, and invited guests. So we spent some time with the HAAB and COAC in coming up with a list of additional people to invite to a special meeting last March. And at that meeting, we identified with all of you community priorities for the future highway cover. So that was a great opportunity. Those priorities have, I think, continued through your work. And I think that we also see those priorities have come out in the additional work that HAAB and COAC did over the summer with Albina Vision Trust. We see that those are part of that. I would call it kind of the foundational land use concept that we have that Megan was showing in the slide. So the city-led meeting that we are talking about, this work session in April, the purpose of the event is we'd like to build upon what the HAAB and COAC produced with AVT over the summer. And this is important foundational work. One thing we do know is that since that time, there actually has been we have some new information. So we want to overlay that new information on the map. So for example, we now know phase one, which will the construction that will start in 2027 for that phase one part of the highway cover. We'll want to take a closer look at that with you and look at the uses that are within that footprint and talk a little bit about that in the context of the full cover. So that's an example. There's also some other technical work that's been done. We've taken a closer look with PBOT at parking and access of these parcels. So we'd like to look at those as it relates to the uses and just do a little bit more refinement on this and see if one thing that could come out of it, does it change any of your thinking of the placement of any of these uses? So that could be something that we talk about a little bit more. So you'll see on this list here, we've kind of divided the agenda into two buckets. And with these topics, the city staff with our consultant team at ZGF are working with us to develop a series of questions that we'll work with you on and brainstorm and talk a little bit more about these different areas as it deals with the land use concept that we have now as our foundation and build upon it. Let's see, Mike, do you want to add anything else about the transportation specific elements? I didn't want to take up too much more time tonight to go into great detail on these topics. The agenda is still being finalized with some really good thought-provoking questions that we want to ask you as part of the session. But this gives you an idea of some of the topics that we would like to cover with you.
I'm good personally. I would say there's these two buckets, right? Land use, urban design, transportation. They're gonna influence each other back and forth, and so just to kind of think, that's the kind of way that we're thinking about kind of framing some of that conversation for the transportation elements. I want to talk about what those streets look like over the cap that ODOT will be building, how they interact with the PBOT project on Broadway and Weidler. I've heard from members of the HAAB and others that there's interest in looking at Williams and doing something special on that street. And so I want to hear from you all about what you're interested in. And so we can think about how we can work with ODOT, but also in our own projects, reflect and honor some of that input. But I don't want to, I don't want to spoil the main event in 6 weeks. So that's all.
Indeed. Rachel, I'm not sure if we have time. We have a couple of questions from HAAB members.
I believe that's up to you all, but I'd love to answer some questions for sure.
Great. Mr. Washington, and then to Kimberly.
You guys remember when we were back in the day, I say roughly about 3 years ago, when we were talking about when we had that discussion with the governor and the whole issue with AVT and that whole deal about where those covers, the size of the cover and all that. And that the concern was that a lot of traffic that we were driving more traffic up Williams Avenue. And we started recognizing that Williams Avenue is sort of a divisive point for the district, right? It divides it. You know, it's where all the new type of excitement, so forth and so on. But we made sure that there was a conversation that went on to where we didn't necessarily want the MLK Boulevard to be taken out of that conversation in terms of traffic redirection and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we don't want to just keep building on the shiny new thing and adding. We want to make sure that the MLK corridor is a conversation that needs to be had, placed in this transportation dialogue as to how we're going to incorporate that and get it healthy and shiny and all that kind of stuff. So that I just wanted to make sure that you guys were reminded that this conversation about driving more revenue and economic growth into to Williams Avenue, it's great on one hand on the side, but we don't want to necessarily just shy completely away from the main quarter, which is the MLK quarter.
Thanks, Mr. Washington.
That's great. Thank you, John.
Kimberly?
Yes, I was just curious with the parking. Are you considering a parking structure that could be used by adjacent businesses like the Billy Weld Elk Lodge, who now having some very serious parking restrictions along Telemark, and so I was wondering if that conversation has happened. It would not be a consideration.
Yeah, thanks. So for the caps, so the work that we'll share at the session will really be focused on the cap properties and the remnant properties and those new streets that are part of the Rush Quarter project. So for those, what we've done to date is really think about what that curb looks like. Like what happens at the curb? Is it a spot for outdoor dining? Is it a spot for parking and loading? Is it a spot for moving, you know, bikes or buses or cars or different things like that? So we haven't looked at you know, specific parking garage strategies. When we think about parking as a necessity for the district, we look a bit bigger than the cap itself, right? And think about the existing garages, Rose Quarter, what that could look like, and what those needs look like if some of it's done through development, if some of it's done offsite. So, but that's a good spot. We hadn't looked that far north in terms of thinking about parking and parking needs. So that's something we can chew on and talk more about when we do our session next month.
Thank you. Because I always wonder about the cumulative impact. You know, and I don't know if it would be that impacted that far north, but it would be great to kind of really look at how it's going to impact, like, you know, Dean's and Beauty Barbershop, who was part of those early conversations, and the Billy Weld Elk Lodge, and who's struggling with parking, and if there's increased traffic, it's going to be, you know, impact the business. And thank you so much.
Those are good points for sure.
Thank you for those questions and comments. Rachel, Mike, anything further from you all?
I would just want to reiterate that you know, we understand you all are busy, and we will get on your calendars as soon as possible the location, as well as you know, we'll make sure we change the date, so you have April 24th as the date. So yeah, thank you very much, and we very much look forward to the event.
Thank you to you both. Appreciate that. We're going to move ahead in our agenda. I will be turning it over to our colleague John Wolf, who will give us some exciting design updates.
Thank you very much, Erica, and for the opportunity to bring these updates to you today. So I have a few slides to help bring this group up to speed on some of the activities related to our 30% design phase for our main construction package. So next slide, please. So we've been talking with this group for for some time related to the main construction package and 30%. So this slide is kind of looking back at some of the input and engagement we've had on a few key areas related to the highway cover. So first off, we've engaged a lot around the highway cover and some of the design assumptions and considerations that went into that. These included discussions around our bridge girder selections and layout and the bridge capacity, and identifying what we anticipate as the realm of the possible around the new highway cover. We've discussed and explored some of the structural considerations and complexities that go along with the types of things that we're envisioning, and dove in on bridge joint placements, how we may accommodate utility access, geotechnical considerations around the covers, and really trying to figure out what, again, establishing the realm of the possible around the highway covers. In addition, we've had some conversations around local street circulation and how we can design this project with intent to really make sure we're making decisions around the street circulation and local streets that creates the spaces and uses that are in alignment with the vision and feedback we've received from the HAAB. Some of that involves how we manage ramp traffic and has led to the conversations and decision about relocating the southbound off-ramp, trying to improve the way vehicles move through the project area, but also creating space that is inviting and separate from the utilitarian function that the existing interchange is really centered around currently. So if we can move to the next slide, we'd like to kind of acknowledge that as we continue to move the design forward, we're going to continue taking some of this feedback and input we've received, as well as the project values, and helping guide some additional design decisions in a few of these key areas. So first being the pedestrian and bicycle bridge aesthetic input as we look at the new connection across I-5, that pedestrian and bike only facility across I-5, and how we can use that as a new connection, as well as an attractive facility and opportunity to really reinforce this new community and district. The tunnel portal aesthetics. So as we start thinking of this new structure across I-5, what are some ways that we can blend and optimize the look and feel and aesthetics to create that unique district as we come through the project area, and then continue our conversations around cover use and looking towards that interim or near-term day of opening type of condition that we might want to be designing our highway cover towards. And then lastly, continuing on local street designs as we move into final design. So really up until this point, we're trying to set the key building blocks, the major assumptions that make up our transportation network and the area around our defining our area of impact. And then as we move into final design, how we will refine and develop the details to those streets and how they will complement those intended community uses. And then as we've heard more today, there'll be continued project-related opportunities for input through the Reconnecting Albina Planning Outreach, the Lower Albina Streetscape projects, and additional work being led by community that is being complemented and developed in parallel to this Rose Quarter Improvement Project. If we would go to the next slide, we have two main points we wanted to circle back to with this group today, and the first being our ramp design progression and what we're referring to as an avenue design option, and then come back in a little bit more to some of the refinements happening around the bike and pedestrian connections. So we have previously been in front of this group discussing a two-way Ramsey Way design option in which some of the ramp traffic would continue along Ramsey Way towards the west, allowing circulation and access to the event area, and then reconnecting and extending west at Broadway intersection. And we also explored an option for a two-way Wheeler as a design option that would reconfigure the existing Wheeler Avenue and Victoria into a two-way street. And as we've explored those options and continued engagement with project partners, a third option was identified that we are now referring to as southbound Williams Avenue. That is the recommended local circulation for this ramp that's being reflected in the 30% design. And so what that does is it still maintains the primary southbound exit ramp connection by way of the flyover structure that will go over I-5 and reconnect Weidler and eastbound traffic, but allows and accommodates an access for local trips and event circulation to use southbound Williams Avenue to enter into the area and circulate on the existing Williams Street and Multnomah Street circulation. If you would go to the next slide, it covers a few of the main considerations as we explored, advanced, and ultimately came up with the recommended approach for southbound Williams. So as noted, it still creates that, still maintains that primary connection of the southbound exit ramp flyover up and over I-5 and reconnecting to eastbound Weidler Street. That serves roughly 2/3 of the off-ramp traffic and really is the primary movement of auto vehicles through the interchange. That flyover itself is a significant configuration in which all of that traffic has to navigate through Broadway, Vancouver, and local streets that we're trying to create that unique and enhanced local community space up near and adjacent to the highway cover. This change also simplifies some of the circulation that was being explored along two-way Ramsey and two-way Wheeler and reconnecting to the Broadway corridor. So it brings those trips into a more direct connection to Williams Avenue, Multnomah Street, and then still provides access for those trips to come back and re-enter the event district, which is really where a large volume of trips that would be using this ramp would be looking to access and maintain. And then another benefit is it allows the existing Ramsey Way to continue to serve primarily as event access and traffic control for local events with access to the Moda Center garages, as well as minimizing any conflicts between automobile traffic and pedestrian traffic going to and from the event. So with that, this is kind of a recap and review of the southbound Williams Avenue and some of the considerations that went into this design option. And I'll just pause to see if there's any questions on anything I highlighted here on these slides.
I see a hand from Bryson.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Remind me on the flyover and then the northbound exit. Are they set up so if you're taking that flyover, you have to turn right onto Weidler, or can you go straight onto Victoria?
Yeah, it is set up so that you must turn right, and and that is one of the considerations here is the northbound ramp does remain, right? So that you have if you're going northbound, you have the option to go north onto Victoria or turn right onto Weidler. And there isn't a lot of space to create more options for that flyover to connect with that route. And so there'll be a traffic separator dividing this flyover ramp from the northbound exit ramp until you get to Weidler and turn right.
So then if you were going like into the Pearl from 5, you would go down around the Moda Center and then back up to Broadway Bridge. Is that how it works?
So if you were going into the Pearl, you'd have the option to get off on 405. And as it currently is configured, the existing exit ramp it's really close to a coin toss, depending on where within the Pearl you're going, to use the Fremont Bridge in 405 versus coming to the existing Broadway interchange. In this new configuration, you most likely would be using 405 instead of coming down to this area, unless you were looking to enter somewhere very localized, in which case you could use the southbound Williams to cross the Steel Bridge, or you could use southbound Williams to circulate back up to Broadway by way of Interstate Avenue, or a number of other local routes depending on your destination.
Got it. Got it. All right. Yeah, I'm seeing it.
I see a question or a comment from Mr. Keith Edwards. Mr. Edwards, you can feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, I guess that would help, wouldn't it?
There you are.
I apologize for being late, but I just had a question on the southbound Williams Avenue. That's a change as you know, from what it is now, of course. So, but how does that I guess my question is, how does that how far does that go back? How far north does that go where it's going to be changed to a two-way?
That's a great question, Mr. Edwards. So there is no change to the Williams Avenue. So today you can go southbound on Williams through this area. And so this one, unlike those other two options, it doesn't require a change from a one-way street to two-way. So let me just explain what Williams would be between Ramsey, which is right at the new exit ramp, and Multnomah, which is at the bottom of the screen. It would be southbound only for autos, and then autos and buses, and that's an existing condition. And then northbound would be bus only, which is also an existing condition. So there's no change to the way Ramsey is circulating. The main change is that now that access point, if you were coming from I-5 South, it's kind of being made directly at Ramsey Way instead of being made at Broadway and allowing you to continue southbound.
Okay, thank you.
Bryson? You're muted, Bryson.
Is there any impact to the pedestrian movements down by the transit center, or is that going to be unaffected by this?
Yeah, that's a great question and something we've been looking into. So kind of trying to describe this at a high level. Basically, the way that it works today, when east or westbound traffic on Multnomah is going, the crosswalks that are not in direct conflict with that are active. And then when southbound Williams traffic is going, the crosswalks are going. So it's considered a two-phase signal. There's kind of two main stages. And if there's a turning vehicle, they would have to yield to pedestrians. In this configuration, we're going to what's referred to as a three-phase signal. So we're creating a pedestrian crossing phase for each of the specific movements, which does require some changes to the signal timing, but does allow us to separate the vehicle from pedestrian movement. So that's how that's being addressed with this update.
So there's going to be one signal that's just pedestrians at that Wheeler Multnomah intersection. Is what you're.
It's an existing signal, and so that signal is going to have a new signal phase where, depending on which movement is active, the pedestrian crossings will also be active. So anytime there's a turning conflict against a crosswalk, that won't run at the same time as the pedestrian crossing is active.
Got it.
Excellent questions. Thank you. John, I'm not seeing any additional.
Okay, well, we have 2 more slides now related to the bike and ped overcrossing, and then if we have any other questions come up, we can circle back to that. So similarly, we wanted to report back on the refinements and design approach for the new pedestrian and bike overcrossing. And really the focus today is on the western touchdown or the western connection as you get across I-5 and try and get back to the existing network. So just at a high level, again, this separated bike and pedestrian facility is really looking to create that safe and comfortable location for users trying to cross I-5 that gets you away from some of the busier streets. And it's also serving as that extension and key link to the city's planned green loop that's meant to really bolster that user abilities to navigate throughout Central City on a safe and effective pedestrian corridor. And so currently the design was looking to touch down in the area we've referred to as the Green Triangle, which is an open landscape space between Wheeler Avenue, Ramsey Way, and Center Court. And as we've looked at that option and its considerations and its connectivity to Ramsey Way as the potential green loop route, we've identified some challenges with what modifications would be needed to Ramsey Way, as well as the functionality of that as the primary connection. And as part of that, in work with City of Portland and the project team, we've identified a refinement to that western touchdown that if we go to our next slide, what we are looking at exploring to implement within the 30% design is a western touchdown now that would extend up to Weidler Street and the Broadway corridor. As we've learned more about the Lower Albina Streetscape project and the enhancements being planned for Broadway Weidler, creating a more attractive environment for that to function as that high quality facility that the Green Loop is intended to be. We are looking at an option to bring that western touchdown up to Weidler Street along the existing Wheeler Avenue, while also providing a direct access point for those who are destined to the Motor Center or Event District by way of a staircase connection at the Green Triangle. And so this is a refinement that we think is consistent with that vision and value of trying to make Broadway and Weidler a more attractive space for people to navigate through on all modes of transportation, while still providing that primary event access option for people who want to use this new structure to bypass any surface streets that are interacting with automobile traffic. And so with that, again, just wanted to bring this design progression forward to this group, share some of the considerations that went into this thinking, and then create an opportunity for a follow-up on any questions that you might have.
Members, are there any questions for John regards to design and what you've seen here regarding the ped and bike refinements. Going well.
All right. Well, yeah, again, I appreciate the opportunity to bring these design updates back to the group as we approach that 30% milestone and really kind of establishing those building blocks that are going to set the foundation that will carry into final design. And again, happy to help answer any questions and look forward to some continued engagement, which I think is on the next slide. Erica, I'll hand it back to you.
Indeed. Thanks, John. Appreciate your work and helping us understand where you've incorporated HAAB input, community input in regards to pedestrian and bike safety. So I wanted to take just a moment to share with you all our look ahead for engagement with you all, as well as some of the additional community members that you all identified in our extended HAAB engagement, as well as the COAC. So as our colleagues at the city mentioned earlier, we will be updating your calendar invite to include you in the city-led wrap session on April 24th. Mike, I see your hand. Did you want to jump in quickly?
Very quickly, I just would add that we are looking at a virtual option as well for the city-led meeting.
Yes, yes, indeed. We realize that everyone cannot be in the space. We are excited about being in person as that personal touch and engagement has been so critical and helped us move the work forward. So again, April 24th, planning for a hybrid meeting. Those who are in the Portland Metroplex, we would love to have you in person as that engagement is just so interactive. And we'll be talking about the Reconnecting Albina Planning Project and seeking your input as well as COAC members and your invited guests that participated in our HAAB extended meeting. Then in May, we will be having a joint in person is the plan. Again, looking for location and space that is accessible. It is our goal to have great parking for you all as well. As we know, that can be a challenge in the Portland Metroplex. But May 13th, a joint HAAB and COAC meeting and talking a bit about construction preparation and exciting about shovels in the ground for the I-5 Rose Quarter project. And then we'll come back together in June virtually to have further work in regards to construction and wrap engagement, et cetera, and really have some thought about design and what we might be getting into in regards to interim use as the conversation continues. So we are excited about the work ahead. Appreciate you all continuing to engage around this really, really vital and important work. And so wondering just briefly, we're doing really good on time. If there are any additional thoughts or comments from HAAB members before we move forward.
I just want to suggest that maybe you consider the World Forestry Center for, I just came back from a meeting there, plenty of parking and it's accessible.
Thank you for that suggestion. Much appreciated. Mr. Edwards.
Excuse me. The May 13th meeting, I think it's very important that everyone come together in person at that meeting so that we're not, I just think there needs to be a time, and maybe that meeting gets extended because I think that's a major discussion that needs to be had. And I don't know when the last time that the HAAB and the COAC have been together.
Agreed, Mr. Edwards. We are encouraging all of you all to be prepared to join us in person. It's an exciting time to think about construction, and there will be considerations and getting your input on impacts, et cetera. So thank you for that. I see Mr. Washington and Miss Leslie Goodlow in that order.
University of Oregon over here in the Soul District has an ample amount of space also for utilization. A lot of people have been using it. So if you need the space, let us know. We can maybe help you broker that real quick.
Thank you. I can as well. Yes, we were trying to be considerate of staying in the district and making sure, but thank you. Those are some excellent suggestions. Thank you, Mr. Washington. And Miss Leslie.
I'm just going to be real transparent. I have a Tuesday meeting weekly with our deputy city administrator from 4 to 5. So if the meeting's on Tuesday the 13th, I'm going to not be able to be there until after 5 o'clock. And if I have to travel somewhere, it's probably going to be 30 minutes of my participation, depending upon where it is, because I'll be coming out of downtown. So just wanting to put that out there.
Well, let's move that meeting because we want you to be there.
Say one more time.
Let's move that meeting so you can be there throughout.
She is definitely an important voice, and we will take all of this into consideration as we finalize locations. Thank you all for those really great suggestions, because we would love to see you all in person. We want to make sure that everyone who can and has capacity to is able to engage. Next slide, please. We thank you all for joining us. We are trying to be efficient and considerate of all of your time. Again, I just want to reiterate our appreciation for continuing the work. You all aren't new to this, as you all have been advocates in this community for much of your careers and lives, if you will. So, Dr. Holt, if you'll close us out, we would appreciate it.
Excellent work, Miss Erica, as always. Tiffany, welcome into the space. What a moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad that you're here. You jumped in at a critical time of lift and leadership, right?
Yeah, critical.
Yeah.
You guys have done a lot of the work, so I feel like I get the easier road, but it's still a work in progress.
Yes, indeed. My closing thought is merely that we're at a critical point and an interesting point, and what crisis often provides for us is a pull on the creativity that is within us. And we who have lived in Portland, especially those of us who are people of color, know what it is to have to address and adjust and deal with things we didn't anticipate in order to move things forward. And so for the Historic Albino Advisory Board, this isn't new. This is the reality of what we've lived in. We appreciate and thank you, Megan, for your leadership and identifying early on that the values of the project haven't changed. I think we can't emphasize that too often or too much, especially with the critics who listen in and then interpret and share as they share, to be able to say the values haven't changed and haven't moved. And so to the Historic Albino Advisory Board, who've given your time and your energy, thank you so much for continuing to stay in the space and continue to do the work. As a consultant in the project, it's our effort to do all we can to make sure that through a transparent process, we are reaching the goals that will benefit a community that deserves the best opportunities possible. So with that being said, great meeting. Have an excellent night, everybody.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Great job, Erica. Pastor Holt. Good job.
Thank you, Director Penson.
Thank you very much.